Slade Gorton has a long record of public service, including 18 years in the United States Senate. Of his many accomplishments, Seattle sports fans would say that his greatest involved Major League Baseball. When the Seattle Pilots moved to Milwaukee after just one season, Gorton was the state attorney general. Recognizing the injustice of losing the team after just one season, he sued the American League. The American League settled, awarding the city an expansion franchise in 1976, and the Seattle Mariners took the field the very next year. A second baseball crisis arose in 1991, when Mariners owner Jeff Smulyan reportedly wanted to move the team to Florida. Again, it was Gorton to the rescue. Facing a 120-day deadline to find $100 million, Gorton, then a senator, called Howard Lincoln and Minoru Awakawa at Nintendo of America. Nintendo Global CEO Hiroshi Yamauchi of Japan offered to invest the full amount as a thank you to the city. However, with Major League Baseball looking for local owners, Gorton connected groups of individuals from Nintendo of America, Microsoft, McCall Cellular, and the community. The result was unprecedented. A Japanese-American ownership group with John Ellis as the first CEO, and the partners all committed to keeping the Mariners in Seattle. When the Mariners ownership and local government were wrangling over the first lease and final agreement on building a new ballpark, Gorton once again brought all the parties to the table. The result was a 20-year lease and one of the best ballparks in America. 20 years later, the same group of original buyers still owns the team, and the Mariners are still safe at home. And their beautiful retractable roof ballpark is both a tourist attraction and a source of local pride. Mariner fans and all sports fans owe a debt of gratitude to Slade Gorton. He has been and remains their true champion.
And now, here to present the Paul G. Allen Award to Slade Gorton, Mariners owner John Stanton.
Thank you. It's not very often that you have the opportunity to honor and introduce your hero. Slade Gorton is, for me, one of my heroes. Growing up in the Northwest, I first met him in 1968 when I was 12 years old and I was silk-screening signs for his campaign for Attorney General. Slade was born in Chicago, and to this day, the Wrigley Field Cubs are his second favorite baseball team. He was born 90 years and 1 month ago today, on January 8th, 1928. Slade has engaged in public service for the past 7 decades. He served in our Washington State Legislature. He was our Attorney General. He served 18 years as a United States Senator. He is a Northwest icon, and he is a national treasure, most recently serving a vigorous role as a member of the 9/11 Commission. But tonight we celebrate what Art Thiel in his book, Out of Left Field, described as the man who saved baseball 3 times in its first 26 years in Seattle. The video did a great job of telling the story, but it's important to punctuate that story. In 1970, the Northwest had suffered many economic blows. The loss of 75,000 jobs at Boeing. But perhaps the worst blow, at least to sports fans, was having a used car salesman from Milwaukee steal our Seattle Pilots and take them away to become the Milwaukee Brewers. The legal strategy that Slade undertook was unique. It had never been tried before, and there had been no efforts that had ever been successful in getting Major League Baseball to capitulate on an issue related to expansion or relocation. But Slade was able to do it. He organized a jury trial in Everett. He brought as evidence the owner's own testimony, recorded in meetings that they had held, and demonstrated that they had unfairly treated the Seattle franchise. The arrival of the Mariners in Seattle in 1977 was the direct result of the settlement that Slade negotiated with the American League, and was the direct result of Slade's brilliance and tenacity. 15 years later, after 3 ownership groups, and still at that point only one winning season in 1991. When Jeff Smulyan put the team up for sale, there was a wide belief that the Seattle Mariners would go to Tampa Bay, becoming a community losing 2 Major League Baseball franchises in a 20-year period. But as a condition of the lease in the Kingdome, Smulyan was forced to look for local owners. The problem is none emerged, and it was Slade Gorton who made phone call after phone call to community and business leader, persistently looking for that one potential owner. And when on Christmas Eve 1991, Mino and Howard said, yes, we will put $100 million into baseball in Seattle, Slade described it as the greatest Christmas present he'd ever received. His persistence and perseverance again saved baseball in Seattle. A few years later, it was clear that the aging Kingdome was insufficient to have a sustainable franchise over a long period of time. And in December of 1996, when there was a complete breakdown in the relationships between county executives and the Mariner ownership, Slade Gorton, for a third time, stepped into the breach. In a combination of shuttle diplomacy and, frankly, power politics, Slade Gorton got both sides to compromise and was able to reach an agreement which resulted in the construction of Safeco Field. Most importantly, the construction of that building and the sustained commitment of this ownership group has led to franchise of baseball in the Seattle area that assures that baseball will be here for generations to come. Slade continues to advise our ownership. He's a huge fan. I looked it up this afternoon. He went to 28 games last season, and he keeps score at every game. He taught me his trick that I've adopted, and that is that as he's walking out of the ballpark, if the team wins, he takes it home, the scorecard home, and puts it in a pile. If the team loses, he looks for the nearest trash receptacle. We celebrate Slade tonight. When we think of the Mariners, we usually think of names like Buhner, Martinez, we think about Junior, we think about the role of Lou Piniella, but I am here to tell you that the single most important person to keep baseball in Seattle over the last 40 years and hopefully the next 60 years is Senator Slade Gorton. It is my honor. It is my honor to present to you and to present to Slade the Seattle Sports Commission Paul G. Allen Award for his lifetime of commitment to baseball.
Presenting the award to Slade Gorton tonight is Miss Washington.
The Seattle Mariners are the first and only Major League team ever to have been created by a lawsuit. That lawsuit stemmed from the notorious one-year existence of the Seattle Pilots, perhaps the most dysfunctional Major League team in history, chronicled by Jim Bouton in a wonderful book named Ball 4. The Mariners suffered one beginning shortcoming in common with the Pilots: absentee ownership. In fact, 3 straight absentee owners without either the wherewithal or the passion to create a successful franchise. Then, in the early 1990s, we were able to persuade a group of people who were doing business here and living here to buy and to preserve the Seattle Mariners, a saga immortalized by Art Thiel in his book, Out of Left Field. The people who brought the ownership along with the team to Seattle. Hiroshi Yamauchi, Minoru Arakawa, Howard Lincoln, Chris Larson, and last but not at all least, John Stanton, for whom I owe thanks for that fulsome introduction and for stealing most of what I wanted to say to you here tonight. 2 years after that recovery, I had occasion to be in Tokyo and to have dinner with Hiroshi Yamauchi, whose first question through an interpreter was, "Tell me, Mr. Senator, how is that baseball team in Seattle I purchased doing?" His gesture was a pure civic thank you to this community for the success of Nintendo. And so we have an ownership and a location in common. But for all of their efforts, there's still one thing missing in the history of the Seattle Mariners: a pennant and a World Series appearance. And for years, our slogan has been, "Wait till next year." This season, with a little help from the medical gods and a healthy group of players, this will be next year.